Hello world, it's Monday the 16th of January and we're looking at soaring weather forecast for Worcester for tomorrow the 17th of January 2023. Today's tasks were cancelled, but quite a few pilots actually flew anyway and quite a few completed those tasks, and in hindsight I think our forecasts were not totally wrong, although it was a very difficult day to set tasks for. Moving on for tomorrow, we can see at Worcester we have another very hot day, 38 degrees. We have an inversion that's above 4,000 feet, maybe 4.5 or 5. We have wind which is quite light and variable with a wind shear at about 3,000 feet. And some upper air moisture which we might see some more of. 5 o'clock. It's still working nicely, still rather confused winds, and above it it goes northerly, and it's still very hot. But I'm going to look slightly differently because there's some interesting things happening. This is a boundary layer wind for 2 o'clock. This is the average wind at thermal height, so the average wind you would expect if you were doing a thermal based task. As you can see, we have a wind coming in from the northwest and we have a wind coming in from the southeast, and they meet in the Breda River Valley, quite close to Worcester. That's at 2 o'clock. If I zoom out, you'll see that on a bigger scale it's two quite big systems that are coming together, and they're meeting in the Breda River Valley and further down in the valley. Let's zoom in a bit. You can see Worcester, Robertson. At 5 o'clock we have the same picture. This wind is moving a bit southwest from the northwest on the western side and coming in sharply from the southeast on the southern side. And the same at 5 o'clock. Obviously when the two winds come together like that, they stop in the middle and something's got to happen. You can look at this one. The wind is howling and then it stops dead just before it gets to Worcester, so something's happening. Let's look at cloud now. This is 2 o'clock, and you see we've got this cloud just to the north of us. That's over the top of the Hex River Pass, just before Toes River. And we can see that cloud base is 12.5, nearly getting close to the controlled airspace at 14,500 feet. If I zoom out, you'll see that we actually have 3 significant cloud systems. This is the one that we just saw on the high resolution map. There's a second cloud system that's deep in the Karoo here, and there's low cloud coming in from the coast. Now that's at 2 o'clock. At 5 o'clock it changes. This cloud system over the Hex River, the top of the Hex River Pass, has gone completely. You still see the cloud coming in from the south, and if I zoom out we can still see the cloud over the Karoo, but our system that was over here has burnt off. So let's go back to looking at some conventional tasks with surface wind. 2 o'clock, you'll see that we've got wind on the northern ridge, the Porterville Ridge, nicely on the Witzenberg. It's quite light. Witzenberg is about 8 knots, 8 to 10. Same on Porterville, also 8 to 10. It's enough to light up the Witzenberg quite nicely. It should also work on Porterville Ridge. Zooming out, we can see that wind continues up onto the Cederberg. It's quite light at Renorsterhoek. Going the other way, we see we've got the southeaster coming in, and zooming out, that southeaster is coming onto the Langeberg from Robertson to Swellendam and further to the east, and that is pushing 12, 14, even 16 knots in places, which looks good, but we'll get there. Surface wind at 5 o'clock, it's gone quite light in the north. Certainly on the Porterville Ridge, it's now down to below 8 knots, and on the Witzenberg, still 10 knots, still enough to keep the Witzenberg happy. And you can see this very dramatic winds coming in here at 12, 15 knots and stops dead just before it gets to Worcester. Something is happening. Zooming out, we can see still wind on the eastern ridges and on the northern ridges, but much lighter on the northern ridges. But let's look at some details. Let's look at some soundings. Firstly, if we want to go inland, this is Dorens in the Hex River Valley. We wouldn't normally set a task that way because there's nowhere to land, but you can see that besides this little aberration here, it is basically thermic, and the wind a fairly consistent 20 kilometers an hour from the west. And at 5 o'clock, similar with another little aberration at about 4,000 feet. There's some moisture, which may be significant. Ceres, similar. The interesting wind profile here, but it's light wind and it's thermic. But at 5 o'clock, something's happened. We've got wind nosing in from the west. That must be coastal wind, and it's killing off this lift. So what exactly is happening here is not clear, but that may explain why that cloud disappeared. Toes River, good at 2 o'clock, and once again this nose coming in. This is more southerly now, but coastal air, and it's killing off the lift, and we remember that cloud disappeared. Squirstian, which is right in the Tankwa Karoo, it would be very nice if we can get there at 2 o'clock, and still working but cooling off at 5 o'clock. Fraserburg is deep in the Karoo, and as you can see, very strong, but there's a fair chance of, well, there's cloud, and I suspect there could be some overdevelopment. That's at 2 o'clock, and same at 5. So that was the deep cloud that we saw over the central Karoo. Going on the ridges to the north, Tilbach, 4,000 feet, blowing onto the Witzenberg. 5 o'clock, same thing. Wind is light, but still onto the Witzenberg. Porterville, we've got a wind shear at 3,000 feet, and it's a bit funny, and the lift is not getting very high on the ridge, but it stabilizes at 5 o'clock. Renosterhoek at 2, and at 5, cooling off at 5 o'clock. Going last one out, Clanwilliam, 2 o'clock, cooling off at 5 o'clock. Robertson, we start off with a fairly low inversion, and it gets even lower as this easterly comes in. Swellendam is already down at 3,500 feet, and some cloud forming there in the late afternoon, also at 3,000 feet. Riversdale, similar, nothing above 3,000 feet. Okay, so our options tomorrow, basically 3, and none of them are clear or easy. The first is to go inland, and the cloud development looks very exciting. However, it's not a task that we've done very often, and it's very difficult to predict what it'll actually do, and when it'll disappear and burn off like that, and what will happen after that. We can go to the north, which is great, but it'll finish cool down fairly early in the afternoon. So by this afternoon also, pilots reported that the Renosterhoek Ridge was cooling off in the late afternoon, and I think we'll see the same tomorrow. To the east, even more tricky because the heights never get much above 3 or 3,500 feet, so probably not really an option. Just going back to this mystery wind, I'm looking at the boundary layer up-down maximums. That's an indication of convergence. That's at 2 o'clock. But if I go to 5 o'clock, you see there's this very clear line. That's exactly where that sudden drop in wind speed was. So something is going to happen here. So whatever happens tomorrow, if you get a chance around 5 o'clock, that's worth exploring. And I see there's more of this out over Tosrafi Way. Not sure exactly what's happening through the Hex River Valley, but the Matruisburg Mountains may also be carrying there. And some more further out. If we zoom out, we will see quite a lot. This is 5 o'clock. You see quite a lot of these convergence indications, but they're not so clearly marked on the low resolution forecast. Just doing the same again, I've taken a cross section at 850 millibars. This is just around 4,500 feet, so a fairly realistic height to be if you're exploring this. And something happening, that's at 2 o'clock. Quite far out, and some more around Toes River, and this very dramatic convergence over Worcester at 5 o'clock. It doesn't show very clearly on the high resolution, on the low resolution, the zoomed out map. Anyway, it will be an interesting day tomorrow. I'm sure we will fly. I will have another look in the morning because this is an unusual forecast and is likely to change. I have no idea what kind of tasks we might do, but whatever we do, get a flight in and enjoy it. Fly safely.